So excited that we're able to host an event like this and welcome you all to a really, really beautiful space. Isn't this office awesome? I like to brag because it's really nice. But my name is Michelle. I have actually been a product designer here at Clever for a little over 3 years now. But throughout my entire career, I've actually did many, many things in design. Throughout college, I did a ton of graphic design work. I worked as a marketing designer. And then I actually went to school for architecture, so I did practice and helped design and build many, many high-end condos and apartments in Las Vegas. So if you're ever curious of how the rich and famous live in Vegas, let me know. I have addresses. You can swing by and look how they live. It's really cool. But when I transitioned into product design, I started out at Netflix, helping the lawyers who work at Netflix figure out the important contracts that helps make sure that Netflix original become a reality. And that brought me to Clever about 3 years ago. And a little bit about Clever. As you might know, there are many, many edtech applications out there. And Clever makes it really, really easy for schools, teachers, and students to use them in the classrooms. And districts have all of the powerful tools to make sure that students and teachers have a very, very simple experience in the classroom. But, okay, today I want to talk about this particular persona, teachers. But you might wonder, why do we care? So I'd like for us to all take a little bit of a moment here to think about that one most impactful teacher that you grew up with. Yeah, I'm seeing some smiley faces and nods. I still remember my biology teacher who not only taught me how to study, he also wrote my recommendation letter that got me into UC Berkeley. So I am here because of him, and I'm forever grateful. And so I wanted to share the story today about how Clever figured out how to build tools and things that are impactful for teachers in the classroom. But as designers, we love to think about the impact, the big picture, like why are we doing this, and the people that we care about. So who here can guess how many teachers we have here in the US? No guesses. Price is Right rule.
A million.
A million, yes?
5 billion.
5 million? A bit too high, a bit too high? Yeah, it's actually roughly 4 million teachers. And that's so many teachers. So if you think back to that one really, really impactful person, imagine 4 million of them. And at Clever, you get to have the privilege to design things for them. And that's so exciting. And so going back to when I first joined Clever 3 years ago, I was presented with this challenge of, hey, Michelle, how do we design for teachers? And I realized that this was also particularly hard for me because when I talked to my PMs and my engineers on my team, I realized that our education background was vastly different. I was born and raised mostly in Indonesia. I moved to the United States to start high school here. So when we're talking about elementary school experiences, ours are very different. And we're building for K-12 education. So I needed to learn more. So I put on my research hat and started talking to people. So I wrote a script, I scheduled tons of phone calls, and I talked to many, many teachers. But I soon realized that it looked a lot like this. You know, it's like getting just a little bit of a sense of what's happening in the background and learning about tidbits about it. But I was really missing the holistic overall experience and the holistic picture of what was happening in the classroom. And we could do better. So we wanted to get closer. Also, super cute. So this time, I went back to the classroom. We were so lucky that we were able to go visit the Gordon J. Lau Elementary School, actually nearby here in San Francisco in the Chinatown area. And I was able to bring fellow friends with me during the study. I brought my product manager and a few of our engineers from the team. We were able to come and shadow different classrooms for an entire day. Me in particular had the privilege to shadow a 4th grade classroom for a whole day, and that was really, really great. But before we walked into this classroom, does anyone remember about their 4th grade classroom layout? I love that everyone's just like laughing at it. Anything memorable? Yeah, you have something? That's interesting. Yeah. Kind of like clusters of desks, grouping of chairs, yeah. So see, some things don't change. So this is actually the layout of the classroom that I was able to visit. You notice that there are still clusters of desks. They were tiny, tiny desks. There is a rug in the corner where everyone can go and sit and read their books together. Also, can you tell I used to be an architect? So the story of me walking into this classroom looked a lot like this. Hi, Ms. Mack, which is the teacher of this classroom. My name is Michelle, and she looked at me directly into my eyeball. Cool, Michelle, huh? Do you see this chair in this corner? That's where you're gonna be all day. So I was like, okay, at least I'm 5'1", so like sitting in a tiny chair was fine. But even from that interaction alone, I learned already so much about how teachers think about their classroom. They are the captain of the ship. They want to make sure that everything runs according to plan, and they want to make sure that any outside disturbances remain outskirts, so then they can do the things they wanted to do really well in the classroom, and that is to teach kids. And you may also notice these dots. So because I was outside of all of the actual action, I was able to start noticing these standing spots, so to speak, where Ms. Mack would walk around and eventually walk backwards towards one of these 4 spots. And I thought that was like a really, really funny occurrence. So I shared the story with some of former teachers who now work at Clever. And they all told me that, Michelle, that's actually the most important thing for you to find out when you first started teaching. You gotta know where your standing spots are in a classroom, because you need to see everything and eliminate blind spots. So you just gotta know where those things are. So these 4 just happens to be Ms. Mack's, the teacher I shadow's favorite spots. One other benefit of being outskirts is it really enabled me to take really detailed notes. So I was able to take timestamp notes of every single little thing that was happening. So when did a thing happen? How long did any of these tasks actually take? And quantify how much time it actually took to do all of the small, seemingly mundane tasks. Which made me think, I actually don't know how long it took me to take a shower in the morning or make my coffee, because I just never paid that close attention to. But I was able to do this in the classroom. And eventually class was over, we walked out, and we're super happy, leaving classroom at the end of school. Feeling is still the same as adults, which was really funny. And the next day we went back to Clever, and we did a design jam, and everyone who went to school that day did this together. So this is actually a map, so to speak, kind of a day in the life of a teacher. Start here in the morning, and this is at the end of the day, and we wrote down all of the moments that brought teachers happiness and elation, and we also wrote all of the things that brought teachers kind of just a sense of frustration, things that didn't go well, or things that could have been so much better. And doing this really helped us see opportunities and see the value of what really we can bring as Clever into the classroom. Cool. What did we learn? One is the fact that teachers don't sit, and they do move around a lot. Throughout the entire day, Ms. Mack probably only sat down for, give or take, roughly 10 minutes. So that was a really, really cool insight. Another one, I might have hinted on this a little bit earlier, but context switching is extremely expensive in terms of time sunk. So when I walked into the classroom, Ms. Mack gave me this timetable with all of the things that is going to happen that day. And I noticed that all of the content comes in 20-minute blocks. So 20-minute reading, 20-minute science, and 20-minute math. And when context switching takes about 10 minutes, that's about 50% tax you're paying just getting from one place to another place. So taking students away from the actual real content. But I'm a strong believer of insights really become powerful once you are able to figure out how to impact product and design decision out of it. So when we were thinking about building troubleshooting tools for teachers, we knew that we've got to go mobile first. We knew that teachers are going to be walking around and solving problems in a moment, and they needed a tool to do that at that moment. And it also helped us come up with this idea. we built a feature that allows teachers to instantly context switch for their students at a click of a button. Again, this was not something that would have been possible without observing and understanding how much this actually costs in the classroom. But going back into me, Michelle, the designer who went through all of this, what did I learn? I learned that when your product is being used in a very constrained context, being there is very, very important. You learn so much just through the power of observing all of the mundane and small tasks. So to learn about the classroom, I believe you gotta be in one. And to do that, there are many, many ways you can try. One is you can go find your local classrooms. Maybe it's a good time to start getting in touch with that friend of a friend who happens to be a teacher and see what they're doing in the classrooms. And once you get them in, make sure that you ask for proper permission. So think about not just getting the teacher's permission in the classroom, but also ask about the school policy for visitors or district policy for visitors. And sometimes, if you are in a classroom for a prolonged amount of time, you may actually need parental permission for all of the kids that are going to be in the classroom. So just think about that a little bit harder. And one last thing is that you got to prepare one question. What is the most important question that you want to ask? This is really funny because walking into the classroom, I had this long script of all the questions that I wanted to ask my teacher, and Ms. Mack wanted none of that. So I realized that knowing what is that one thing that you wanted to learn and be ready to ask that question in the moment is very important. But in case you can't find your classroom, you get to create your own classrooms. There are so many opportunities here, specifically in Bay Area, where you can go out there, play the teacher role, and really see how it is to be a teacher and experience it for yourself. You might see some familiar faces, some of my former students and my former co-teachers are here. And if you don't want a second job, because you already have one, you can also volunteer. Interact Project is a lovely, lovely organization that helps teach a bunch of middle schoolers the basics of design. So not only that you get to help teach design, but you also, again, get to experience being a teacher. Actually, the second opportunities taught me how it felt to find my studying spots and seeing all of 11 to 13-year-olds behave all day, which is really funny. But I want to close out by bringing back up this image. I can only share with you all so much of my story, but you gotta go out there and really experience it for yourself. So think about the problem you're trying to solve, the users who are going to be using this tool you're building, and the kind of context they're going to be in it. And once you do that, I'd love to hear your story. And let's build this community of best practices, because I truly believe that we can do right by teachers who really made all of us who we are today. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, next we're going to hear from Raphael R.R. from Khan Academy, his principal designer.
So loud enough? Yes, no? Yeah. Cool. All right. Hi, everyone. Hi. Thanks for coming here. I know there's a debate on. It's pretty cool that you're here instead of watching that. That's wild. So I'm really happy to be here on behalf of the Khan Academy design team. And we've been doing a lot of work with teachers lately. So I want to share a little bit about how we've been starting to think like them. So more often than not, as designers, we're not always our users. So it's really difficult to design a cockpit if we've never flown a plane before. Also probably pretty difficult to design some sort of restaurant point of sale system if we've never waited tables. And similarly, if we've never worked at a medical clinic and had to fill out a patient intake form, it's probably really difficult to design one of those. So you're not a user. This is a pretty common phrase. And it's really about how do we actually design products or experiences that leverage the user, built for the user, without really immersing ourselves into those respective fields. So too often, we have a tendency as designers to apply our own biases or privilege or beliefs into the design process. So this concept is actually called the false consensus effect. And it's really one of the main reasons that user research and testing is so important in the product design lifecycle. And the mind-blowing aspect of this is that we all have a tendency to believe that others will act the same that we do, the same way that we do in any given circumstance, and that might not always be the case. So at Khan Academy, we've spent years trying to answer the question, how do we better design for learners? And on the surface, we've actually all been pretty lucky as part of the design team because we've all been the end user at some point. Whether in school or out of school, we've all taken a class or tried to learn something. And so, not to mention the whole design team, there they are, was inspired to work at Khan Academy, and partially by experiencing the content firsthand. And so this is actually one of the big benefits of consumer-based design. Being consumers, there's a high likelihood that if we like something, find something intuitive or derive value from the experience, that others will too. And the challenge then becomes actually expanding this circle of use to others who might be different in not only preference, but also ability. So pretty recently, we felt that in order to reach our goal, our mission goal of providing a free world-class education to anyone, anywhere, we needed to actually start where learning happens. And that's the classroom. And we want to focus our attention in support of the often overlooked and under-considered supporting actor, if you will, of this classroom drama. And so that is the teacher. So teachers are some of the hardest working members of our workforce. And in a survey conducted by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, this survey was conducted in 2017, US teachers on average earn less than 60% of the salaries of similarly educated workers. And they also have among the lowest relative earnings across all of the countries that were collected in this survey. And according to another Economic Policy Institute study, the teacher wage penalty, and that indicates how much less teachers earn relative to other professions, actually increased from 5.5% in 1979 to a record 18.7% in 2017. So needless to say, developing empathy for the K-12 teacher became our first priority. And so while some of the team, the design team at Khan Academy has had the benefit of teaching in some way, shape, or form, we realized that we were remiss in making assumptions about how K-12 teachers operate. So none of us have actually taught at that K-12 level. And so, whereas before, while we could get away with maybe discounting the phrase, "you are not the user," when focusing on the teacher, there weren't really any more corners that we could cut. And if we did, we'd probably be missing a large part of the puzzle. And then also, in shifting more of our attention to the teacher, we also entered into an unusual design space, enterprise, right? Going with the space theme. So we started to partner with excited district administrators who wanted to roll out Khan Academy to their school districts and their classrooms to help teachers better meet the individual needs of their students, all of whom might be wildly at different levels. And so to put that into perspective, as a fourth grade teacher with maybe say a class of 30, not everyone's at a fourth grade level. Some might be at second grade, and some might even be at sixth grade. And so hitting all those personalized needs is a really big challenge, especially when you're designing products to help support teachers in the classroom. And then to make things a little bit more challenging, in enterprise context, users are not always the buyers. So they don't really have agency in whether or not they choose to use the product that you're making. So this meant that we actually had to design a product that would even be potentially used by the most reluctant Khan Academy teacher. So it became clear to us that while traditional user research methods could help us get a product off the ground, to make it as useful to teachers as possible, that we really needed to go above and beyond both these qualitative and quantitative user research methods. So at Khan Academy, we regularly interview teachers and observe them all over the country and the world for that matter. And that means talking to teachers in school districts where there might not be one Chromebook for every student in the class. It might also mean talking to teachers where only half of their students show up for class. And that's not by choice, but because they're actually part of a family with a single parent, and they have to help that parent with the child rearing process, so they actually can't go to school. So it also means interacting with teachers regularly through our support site and the grassroots Khan Academy Ambassadors group that was created on Facebook. And so that group was created as a way to share best practices on our platform. And whatever the approach, as designers, we really felt that the best way to build empathy was to really start to see the world from teachers' perspective, both the challenges and the rewards that go with teaching and developing young minds in school districts that are both big and small, affluent and poor. But we felt that we could do even more than this. So the good news is that our content team, the folks who are actually making quizzes, exercises, videos, well, it's largely comprised of former school teachers. So it's a privilege for us as designers to have access to these people that we can always direct questions to, and allows us to iterate frequently and incorporate feedback in real time as we're starting to iterate on some concepts. And the more that we became engrossed in teachers' mindsets, the more we realized that we wanted to just dive deeper into pedagogy. And that meant learning all the ways that teachers actually design instruction and the way that they interact with students in the classroom. And so it encouraged us to actually start what we call a pedagogy reading group. And this is a collaborative effort between our design team and our content team. I'm actually happy to say that it's even expanded to the whole company now. So in this space, we've been able to discuss approaches that are at the heart of how teachers teach. And this is made possible by way of interacting with a cohort of former teachers. So we started discussing some of the basics of classrooms, things like norms and feedback and rewards. And in this forum, we've been able to get inside teachers' heads and help to better empathize with some of the challenges of classroom teaching. And this in turn has made us approach our work more thoughtfully. And what we found is that for every pedagogical principle, there's actually a corollary to a design principle. So say, for example, when we think about classroom norms, we're often talking about some of the tenets of inclusive design. What makes a student feel a sense of belonging in a classroom is very similar to what makes any user feel a sense of belonging in any experience. And as designers, we're actually constantly encoding norms into the products and experiences that we make by optimizing for particular types of users. And sometimes we like to think that design patterns might be universal, but that's really only true to the extent that certain groups of people have either learned a shared meaning for them. All right, and so when we think about feedback, teachers approach it in the same way that designers do. They want it to be specific, timely, and non-threatening. So we incorporate feedback in both the pedagogical sense through real-time feedback and quizzes and exercises, but also in more of the broad and higher level design feedback through user actions, like when a user submits a form, getting feedback of knowing whether it was successful or there was an error. And lastly, when we consider rewards, teachers want them to be motivating, just like we do as designers. So, and thinking about weaving in new rewards is actually one of the most fun problems that we get to work on. So from messages of teacher encouragement to silly confetti to photos of our founder Sal with balloons, we've got lots of ideas for how to actually create more moments of joy and encouragement to develop more of this growth mindset for students. So in the process of having these conversations, as part of this reading group, we've actually realized that as designers, we're constantly in a cycle of learning and teaching. We learn from our users, and that helps us develop empathy. And we take what we've learned, and we end up creating experiences that convey clarity and usefulness in a delightful way. And as a result, we end up being teachers. And so while we might not all be teachers with a capital T, we're making strides to go beyond these traditional cycles of design. And if we really want to champion learning and value teachers, then the onus is on us to better understand them. All right, so thank you very much. I want to take a moment to just thank the whole design team, especially Erica, who is here in the audience. And then talk to us afterwards. Awesome.
So next we are going to have Pauline from Newsela. She's the head of design there. She's going to talk to us.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Before we get started, I actually want to do a little exercise one of my teacher friends taught me. So if everyone can stand up. Okay, great. Close your eyes and just try not to think about anything. Okay. Just try. I know it's hard, but just try. Then I want you to take a real deep breath. I'm going to count to 5, okay? All the way in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Now exhale for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. One more time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Amazing. Great job. Now sit back down. All right. How you guys feel? Feeling better now? All right. Cool. All right. Well, thank you for letting me come and talk to you guys. I'll make this short and sweet. I'm almost going to take this in a slightly different direction, but hopefully you guys enjoy it. So thanks for showing up to such a sold-out event. The last sold-out event I went to was a Beyonce concert in 2013 at the Barclays Center. It was before her twins. So, hopefully, I'm excited to be part of such an awesome lineup, but there will probably be no dancing, maybe if you get me a drink. Okay, so just a little bit about me. I am responsible for the design at Newsela and also the awesome people behind the design team there too. How many people have heard of Newsela? Oh, all right, not bad, thank you. For those who haven't, we partner with incredible sources like National Geographic, just to name one amazing partner that we have. But we basically deliver fresh content to the classroom, but we do it by publishing the same article in 5 different reading levels. For those who may not, for those who do know this, you might actually not know that it actually started with Curtis. Curtis is our founder's son, and he's amazing, and he excelled at everything, sports, art, but reading actually wasn't one of those things. And so Newsela is really trying to help reach out to those who struggle, right? And try to make that much more accessible because it doesn't always come easy to everyone. So he teamed up with others at Newsela to build an actual algorithm that actually assesses a student's ability and automatically gives you the right reading level. And that allows every single student in the classroom to read the same article at the reading level that's actually best for them. And really the best thing about this is that the student actually has full control to change the level. So if it's harder than they think than they are able to do, they can actually just change it with a click of a button or a swipe on the app. So differentiated learning is definitely something that's been talked about. Todd Rose, I don't know if people know Todd Rose, but he wrote this amazing book called The End of Average. There's also an amazing TED Talk called Myth of Average, so which if you're like me, that's much more my speed. So I encourage you guys to check that out. And he talks about kind of the importance for designing for the edges, not the average, because when you're designing for the average, you're basically designing for no one. And I thought that was super powerful, and I think that's kind of a lot about what Newsela is based off of. And it actually got me thinking that educators are the ultimate designers of the classroom, right? The exercise that you guys do to help you focus, they're designing for everything. So to me, educators are the ultimate designers. After all, they're crafting the experience of not just for a specific grade or a specific subject, but for very, very different individuals from different backgrounds, from different cultures. So from me down here to my best friend Rachel over there to Jackie, who was clearly having a really bad day. But my teacher, Mr. Fox, always made it amazing. I don't know how, but he always just made it work. And it's messy, right? Like, you know, within the classroom, it's not a straight line, just like with design. So I actually started looking at kind of the different techniques that teachers employ to engage their students. And when I actually realized it's not that different from what designers do. Our toolkits are actually quite similar if you look at it. And upon a closer look and actually sitting in the classroom, like a lot of like what Michelle and Raphael was saying, and observing teachers planning in the teacher's lounge an hour before their class starts, I started to jot down a few simple techniques or routines that I wanted to apply to my practice. So here they are, 3 routines to practice. All right, the first one, foster curiosity. Teachers have a lot of different ways to do this, but this chart here, the KWL chart, was a really simple but really, really effective way of getting kids to just think, just pause and to think. So at the beginning of, so this is how it works. So at the beginning of the unit, the teacher asks their student to fill this out quietly before sharing. And sometimes it comes with like a picture or like a topic or something they just finished, an activity that they just finished. But usually it starts with this, right? Just a simple chart. And basically it just breaks it down, like, what do you know about this topic? Or what do you see in this picture? What do you notice? What connections can you make? And then in the wonder category, in the column, it's like, what do you wonder? What kind of questions do you have about this thing? And then last, on the right, it's what have you learned? And maybe those are answered throughout the unit, right? Based on the questions that you have in the wonder column. So throughout the unit, they're basically investigating and putting stuff onto the right side. But what's really, really important is that this chart is visible throughout the entire unit, right? So they post it on the walls, they have it on the whiteboard, it's always visible. So it's constantly being refreshed throughout the year, or however long that unit is. So, and then as they're answering these questions, they're just crossing stuff out once they have answers to it. So it got me thinking, what do we do at the beginning of our project? Sometimes we talk to the PMs, sometimes we might talk to a stakeholder, do some user research. But what if we just stopped and paused and just thought about it? What do we know about our users before we start the project? What do we know? What do we wonder? What are some questions? What are some data points that would be really helpful to know in order to jumpstart this project? And then once we have answers to those, like, how do we share them out? How do we get that information out to your team members, your engineers, your manager? How do we do that? I think this routine actually helps you get to the point where you make those decisions, but it also has that shared understanding once you arrive at that point. So hopefully alignment's a lot easier this way. All right, second thing. Check for understanding. I saw them do this a lot too. And I'm not talking about quizzes or even like exit tickets. Teachers would gauge their students' understanding all the time. So I saw a teacher once do, all right, kids, I'm gonna give you 30 seconds and I want you to point to New York on this map. And so every kid would put their finger on the map in front of them. And so the teacher would walk around and see, and some kids pointed to California, and they're like, okay, we're gonna need to revisit that one. So, or it's just a simple hands in the air, like how along the scale, like how much did you understand? How much did you pick up throughout the lesson? So we're not waiting to the very end or the end of the state exam to really understand where they are. We're doing these really quick feedback loops throughout the lesson. So, as designers, how do you guys get feedback? How do you guys get these feedback loops quickly so that you know how to iterate on your designs? It kind of lowers the stakes if you think about it, right? Like, if you can surface these questions early, it saves you a heck of a lot of time down the road when you're polishing up your designs. We're actually going through a pretty significant change. And one of the things that my designers did was, before even cracking open Sketch, is just draw boxes and arrows based on what we understood. And we shared that with leadership. And it was awesome, because what ended up happening was the CEO and the CCO basically, we thought they were aligned, but they actually weren't. So we didn't even have any pretty screens or anything like that. We literally just interpreted what we understood the strategy was, visualized it, and then asked them, if this is this, and that means that, then this is what's gonna happen, right? No. So I think that was a really cool way for us as designers to leverage what we do best in a way that surfaces alignments really early. And it starts at a very high level before getting into the nitty-gritty details. All right, last one. Design everything. Teachers are super resourceful. They use every inch of the classroom to create a dialogue with their students. Physical space, audio, text, everything. To me, this was a wake-up call. I am guilty of being in front of the computer and working in screens. What would happen if I just hit print every once in a while? What if I put this stuff all against the wall? What if I, was trying to optimize for a brainstorming session and just rearrange the room? I think sometimes we forget that we can, as designers, we can control the entire environment of meetings, of how we convey our designs in the most effective way. All right, to end, this is a picture of a conference room. I know it's messy. It's one of our conference rooms. It's called homeroom, and everybody hated this room. It was this really long, narrow room. There were no windows. It had these two weird TVs that made no sense. And we were in this room for a meeting, and about 10 minutes in, I got up and I was like, this room sucks. Let's redesign it. And so we got up, rearranged everything, the furniture, the chairs. We couldn't move the TV because it was glued to the wall. But, we had constraints, as any good designer. You work with your constraints. So, and we just did everything we could to make this a usable space. You'll see on the wall here on the left, we actually had some user research. Again, another way where we were just cutting things up and posting these quotes up from teachers and kind of organizing them in a way that made sense to us for our project. And last week, our CEO, who had a meeting in this room, after his meeting, he comes walking by to our area, and he goes up to the researcher and he's like, hey, you know that quote you had over there? I really want to talk about this. And I've been thinking about this idea, and I want to talk to you about it. And I thought that was awesome. All we did was hit print, and we put this on the wall, and we created a dialogue. So I encourage you all to find ways to create dialogues with your leaders, with your coworkers, basically anyone. Thanks.
All right, folks. Our final speaker, Nina Wu from the Mind Institute. Mind Research Institute. Sorry, I knew I was missing something there. We'll take it away.
Okay. I don't think I'm ready. But Polly stole my move. I was going to do a bio break, so everyone stand up. And I'm going to do my bio break anyway.